You know, with this whole situation when it comes to AEW and Tony Khan and everything, in between, it's almost like those that wrestle for AEW, it's like they're too afraid to admit that there's an issue. I mean, you have people like Kenny Omega, you have people like Ricochet to an extent, you have people, um, who else has said this? Who else has said this? Hangman Page, maybe, I think. Just a bunch of talent, notable talent, by the way, that have, gone out of their way and said, look, everything's fine. We don't know what you're talking about. Nothing's bad. Nothing's, up in flames and all that. Everything's fine. And, look, they have a right to their opinion. There's no doubt. I mean, they also have a right to defend, um, their place of work, especially if it's paying them good, and giving them, as well as giving them a decent schedule to, spend time with their family, do other activities, wrestle other promotions. They have a right to defend, that promotion, that place of work. The issue, though, is when you go out of your way, if you're these wrestlers or some of these personnel, you go out of your way and you say that nothing is wrong, everything is fine. You kind of go by that meme of that dog sitting in a room that's totally on fire, and he's, in the speech bubble has him saying, has him saying something of, everything's fine, nothing's wrong here, everything's fine. That's kind of what you get when you have these people defending AEW. It's like they're basically surrounded by a wall of fire. You're interviewing them. You're the only one that notices something's wrong. And yet they're standing there going like, oh, don't worry about all this. Everything's fine. Don't worry about this. Everything's fine. Everything's good. Nothing to see here. And it's like you could tell them to your blue in the face that you're wrong. Something is wrong here. Something is not right. Something's not clicking. And yet they won't listen. Now, like I said, they have a right to their opinion to want to defend their place of work, especially if it gives them the schedule they got and allows them to do what they want to do. But, it's another thing to do that. And, it's another thing to defend your place of work, but also it's another to not acknowledge that, that there are issues. You shouldn't be afraid to acknowledge that there are issues. Now, I think I've said before that if they want to look at the positive side of things and ignore the negatives, do what Paul Heyman once stated about ECW, ignore the negatives, hide the negatives, accentuate the positives, then if they want to do that, that's fine. But the problem is that, basically Paul Heyman knew what to do with ECW. He knew, hey, we don't have a big production, outlet. We don't have the money and the finances to book massive arenas. So what do we do to kind of focus on the positives of what make ECW great? And that's the storytelling. That's the in-ring competition, but it's also majority the storytelling that coincides with that in-ring competition. I mean, why do you think stories like Raven and Tommy Dreamer, when it came to the matches, had such great payoffs? Why do you think those worked? Because the story, that, they were telling accentuated, what you were going to see in the ring, and also basically the ring action complemented what the story was, and the discussion. That's basically what the whole scenario about what he was talking about when it came to, ECW and the state that it was in, as being accentuate the positives, hide the negatives. That's what he was doing. And he did it great. And that's why ECW became such a cultural phenomenon, small but huge, enormous, if you will, in its own way. Why it became a massive, even though it was a small promotion, a massive powerhouse, in its own right, because, Paul Heyman knew what to do there. And now you have people like Eric Bischoff going on places like the Area Hawani show and basically saying that there is no hope for this company because no one knows how to tell a story. No one knows what the heck they're doing, and everything. And people might criticize Eric Bischoff for saying that, but Bischoff has a right to say that because he's been there. Let's not forget, Eric Bischoff was basically was originally somebody that was selling these Ninja Star, whatever they were, toys with Sonny Ono, out of his back seat of his Chevrolet or back seat of his car. And all of a sudden, not even, 6 years later, 5 years later, he's suddenly put in charge of the second most prominent wrestling promotion in the world. And because he also, while he was selling these Ninja Star things, he got himself a job at the AWA, he was able to learn about the ins and outs of, the television business when it came to wrestling. He knew that the only way you're going to make WCW profitable is to take it into an area to where, okay, we're not selling out these massive arenas or stadiums anymore. We're kind of at a downturn. We need something that's going to upturn it. So what does he do? He takes it, makes a deal with the Disney MGM studios, and the rest is history. And then from there on in, he also rents out Center Stage in Atlanta, where they've been known to have wrestling before, get it fixed up just enough to where it kind of is similar to Disney MGM, not entirely, but similar. And again, the rest is history. He knew how to production-wise, make, take a negative and turn it into a positive, but, and I want to emphasize this and I know people are going to notice that and they'll be like, oh, why did he pause for a second? Did he have a brain fart? No, I'm trying to think about what I'm going to tell you. But what I'm saying is he also knew how to rely on others, not himself, others, to write the stories for the talent, even if it was the talent themselves. He took himself out of that equation. Yeah, he would contribute here and there, but from what I know, as a wrestling fan, and if he's watching, Bischoff, correct me if I'm wrong, he took himself out of that equation most of the time, focused on the production aspect and how to make, shows like Saturday Night, Worldwide, Nitro, Thunder, successes. He took himself out of that storytelling equation and focused on letting others, even the wrestlers themselves, tell the story. Now, was that a detriment at times? Yeah, it was, there's no doubt. But here's the issue. All right? When he let the talent help tell the stories, he also allowed other seasoned writers to help them out. But also he allowed those talents to help write the stories for some of the mid to lower card talent that actually had feuds. They had some storytelling to go along with what they were doing. You kind of get what I'm saying? You had people like Sullivan helping out. You had people like, whether you like the guy or not, Mike Graham helping out. You had people like a Nash and a Hall when they came in helping out. So they were contributing. He had people that had experience to rely on. Tony Khan says he has writers, but from what we hear, from what we've been hearing, all he has is 1, 2, 3 main writers that he mentions, and they're only writing for Pacific talent and not anybody else. What sense does that make? What sense does that make? I'll tell you what sense it makes. It makes none. It makes no sense. And that is why AEW right now is in a position where it's in. It's in a position to where, let's say, as I've mentioned before in a video or two, let's say David Zaslav and, WBD decides, hey, we want to sell off because they're in debt. WBD is still kind of in debt. Let's say they want to sell off a portion of WBD, that includes TNT and TBS. Let's say they want to sell that to another person, keep it under the WBD banner, but sell it off to somebody else that will have overseeing power. What happens if that occurs and that new entity that, in agreement keeps it under the WBD banner let's say that entity looks at what's going on with AEW and says, you know what, Tony Khan, I don't want this anymore. David, we can't have this anymore. It's failing. It's losing money. Let's get rid of it. What's going to happen if that entity comes in, says that, Stanislav says, you know what, you're right, I didn't notice that, let's do that. What's going to happen? What are the wrestlers, the personnel, that defend AEW, what are they going to say then? Oh, everything's good, everything's hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden, sorry, closed down for business. What are they going to say then? Are they going to finally come out and admit, okay, fine, it really wasn't that bad, but what did you want us to do? Go back to WWE or go to WWE and let these people do what they want with us? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. The point I'm getting at is you have the right to defend your place of employment, but if everybody is seeing visually and reading evidently, the complete opposite, then there's a problem. There is a problem. And when you have people like Ray Phoenix say what he did recently on Twitter about keeping somebody in a place they don't want to be, being inhumane or something like that, and then you have Ricky Starks going out and saying what he's been doing, it's like, as well as people that don't even work for the company, like FA of GCW, saying what they're saying, then there's an issue. There's a problem. And that Tony Khan does not want to address it, and the talent, maybe out of fear that Tony's going to do to them what he's done to Ray Phoenix and Ricky Starks, there's a fear that they're not going to get utilized. And if that's the case, then you know what? Why don't you do what Mercedes Moné and Trinity Fatu, Naomi, if you will, why don't you do what they did? Why don't you get out of the company and say, I'm done with this company, I'm out, and I will sue you for impeachment or breachment of the contract. And you can do that. If the contract states, hey, you're going to have opportunities and you're not getting those opportunities, you can sue. That's a legal right on your part. You can sue AEW and Tony Khan for not living up to what they promised. And that's a fact. Everybody knows that. So, again, I understand and respect that you want to basically, defend your place of employment. I understand that. I understand, you want to say everything is hunky-dory and everything when it's not, because, basically maybe you fear you're not going to get the opportunities that you've been getting now if you speak out. That you're afraid you're going to end up in the same position that Ray Phoenix and for a time Pentagon Jr., Penta El Zero Miro, Ricky Starks and others, are in. I mean, one major complaint a lot of people have been having is about Athena. Yeah, Athena. And in case you don't know who I'm talking about, she goes by the other name of Ember Moon. Yeah, Ember Moon. Athena. She is the longest reigning champion Tony Khan has across both companies. Across both companies. That being Ring of Honor and AEW. The longest reigning, period. And yet, she's not utilized on AEW. And yet, she's basically subjugated to Ring of Honor, which only gets broadcast on Honor Club, which, by the way, people have to sometimes capture and upload to places like YouTube or Rumble or whatever just so they can watch it or other fans can watch it. It's like, what is wrong with you? Why would you take a talent like that who went to your company, by the way, because she was unhappy with the way she was being booked and treated in WWE? There's even a backstage video of her and Liv Morgan getting ready to go on for a match, and Michael Hayes at the last second saying match is canceled, and Liv Morgan is crying in tears into the shoulder of Athena, and Athena's not happy. It's like, why would you take someone like this who left that company when it was under Vince McMahon's rule to go to you thinking, hey, I'm going to have an opportunity to shine, and they get regulated to Ring of Honor, which is on a pay streaming service platform, which people have to capture and upload onto places like the YT, Rumble, Daily Motion, you name it. Why would you do that? I'll tell you why. Because it's like a lot of people have said, Tony Khan has his favorites. He has his favorites, and he doesn't want someone as talented as Athena outshining his favorites. He doesn't. He doesn't, and that's a shame. That is a shame. Because you know what would happen the moment you put her in the ring, and let's say, hey, you know, let's put her in the ring as a surprise challenger for Mercedes. You know what's going to happen? Fans are going to get behind her because they disdain Mercedes and the cringiness she's bringing because they know she doesn't probably really want to be here. To a lot of fans, all Mercedes is doing is using AEW as a stepping stone to get back to WWE because in their minds, she's trying to tell WWE by being here, hey, see? This is how you should treat me. If I come back, treat me like this. Let me have my own way. Da, 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 da. That's how a lot of people are seeing her right now in AEW. So she's just using it, and she's using Tony Khan to basically get back to WWE so that, in her mind, they'll let her be as she should be. And again, you put someone like Athena in the ring with her as a surprise challenger for the TBS title, and I guarantee fans will be behind her more so than Mercedes, and that's what he doesn't want. Because Mercedes, as crazy, as inappropriate as this might sound, Mercedes is another one of Tony Khan's playthings. But it's a certain kind of plaything for him, I should say. It's a plaything that will only allow Tony Khan to play with it, you know, if he lets her, do whatever she wants. And have whatever she wants. That's the only way Tony Khan gets to play with her. And he does not want to lose that privilege. He does not want to lose that privilege. And that's wrong. That's wrong. You know who you also have? You know who you also have on Ring of Honor? You know who you also have? Okay? You have Billy Starks. Billy Starks is basically their Bayley, if you will. You know, it's basically the Bayley of a few years ago, in a sense. And just like with Bayley, she turned heel, but the difference is Bayley was able to make it work until fans got behind her again and said, hey, we want to cheer for you again. Billy Starks tried to make it work. She's still trying to make it work. But guess what? Fans love Billy Starks. And they want to see more of her. You got Red Velvet. You know, very beloved star. She's the Ring of Honor Women's TV champion. That's great. But where is she now? I haven't seen her. I haven't heard the previews talking about her. Why isn't she on AEW? I'm just saying. See, these are issues that need to be addressed. And yet you have talent. You have talent like Kenny Omega, to an extent Ricochet, and others that are being shown on television coming out and saying, oh, everything's fine, everything's good, don't worry, nothing to see here, it's fine, it's a well-oiled machine, it's fine. And yet you have people like Ricky Starks, you have Effie of GCW, you have Ray Phoenix in his own way recently, you know, you have them all basically saying the complete opposite. And then on top of that, you have Eric Bischoff and Jim Cornette and even Alvarez to an extent alongside Meltzer, but mostly Alvarez, coming out and saying the opposite. You have Sean Ross Sapp, who has connections in the business, saying the opposite. You have Chris Van Vliet saying the opposite. The point is, there comes a time where you need to cut out the bullshit, excuse my language, God, cut out the bullshit and be honest with yourself. Look yourself in the mirror and basically say, I'm the problem, that I'm the reason AEW is in the dumpster. Or I'm the reason, you know, Tony Khan is not making a change and I need to stand up and tell him. I need to challenge his manhood. And I think that's the issue. Nobody's challenging his manhood. No one is stepping up and saying, hey, this AEW is in the dumpster right now. And that's the truth. I stood up for your company for the past couple of months. And everything people are saying is true. And I see it now. But I was too afraid to say it. I'm not afraid to say it now. So either you change it, or if you got the balls, if you're man enough, change it. Or if you're man enough, or if you're a coward, just go and bench me like you've done everybody else. That's what somebody needs to do. They need to look him in the eye, call him out, and say, if you're a man, prove to us you're a man, you're a boss, change this for the better, focus on those that need to be focused on and can bring eyes to your product, get real writers into your employment, get them to write good stories, or if you're just a coward, do to me what you've done to others and bench me. Somebody needs to do that, call him out. They need to call him out for his BS. Because I guarantee you, if it's not done soon, AEW is not going to have a future. I mean, everybody's talking about it. This new contract that now includes a simulcast on Max starting on the first Dynamite of the new year next month. Everybody's talking about that deal being great, and maybe it is. And maybe there is a reasoning for that deal. Maybe they're looking at the fact that, okay, Raw is going to be on Netflix, and it's going to be VOD almost immediately, and you're getting all these other reports of it doesn't matter where Raw is going to be at, it's going to always be broadcast live, and that's great. Here's the issue, though. Max is simulcasting. The simulcast means it only comes on at one time. So that means basically you gotta wait until, let's say you live here on the West Coast, you might have to wait until 10 o'clock at night, maybe 11, to get the on-demand feed. That's what you're gonna have to do. Unless they show it at 5 o'clock on Max and 8 o'clock on TBS. I'm just saying. It's like, it's like they look at this and they're thinking this is gonna be a saving grace, and it might be. It might be, but it might also be confusing. What Raw is doing with Netflix, from what we're hearing, is they're saying, look, it's not going to matter if Raw's in the UK and they're 8 hours ahead of the West Coast, or they're 4 hours ahead of the East Coast, or whatever. It's going to go live no matter what. So let's say Raw is, it starts at what, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, UK time, United Kingdom time, 6 o'clock. It's about 8 hours difference over here on the West Coast. What is that? 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 12, 11 in the morning? 11 in the morning? Unless you're off that day because you got that day off or you requested it off, it's going to show up live on that time frame. But it doesn't mean you have to miss it. What it means is you can come home from work, come home from school, you get yourself comfortable, do your homework, whatever, tune in to Netflix, boom, you can catch up on Raw. You don't have to worry, about waiting a month like you do with Peacock just to watch it. The point I'm getting at is, yeah, they have this new deal and it might be, something that's going to help AEW in the long run, but really, is it going to? Because the only way I think it's going to help is if AEW basically starts simulcasting at the same time that the product goes live in whatever venue they're at. So for example, if AEW is in, let's say they're in Columbia, South Carolina. Let's say they're at a smaller venue, not the arena of the Gamecocks, but a smaller venue. Let's say they're at a smaller venue, but let's say they decide, okay, we're going to broadcast live at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Because, hey, it's easier. It's easier for us to do 4 o'clock in the afternoon, West Coast time, which is 7 o'clock in the evening there. Let's say they do that. Let's say they go 7 Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific, right? The only way it's going to work is if it comes on at that time. If it comes on at that time. If TBS, TBS decides, hey, or not TBS, but Tony Khan decides to tell TBS, hey, if we're going to compete somewhat with WWE and their new streaming thing, we need to put Dynamite on at 4 o'clock, right on the dot on TBS, the simulcast with Max, to make it perfect. And that'd be great. That'd be perfect. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I would have no issue with that. And that might work in their favor if they do that. But will it be the answer to them turning things around? We don't know. I mean, people are saying that you could book the Hammerstein Ballroom all you want. You could coincide and book yourself within a convention like the GalaxyCon they did, and that's great, and that's something they might have to look into. But there are pictures floating around. Maybe it's before the show, obviously, but there are pictures floating around that Collision. I'm not joking about this. Collision at GalaxyCon with all floor seating, and the images before they went dark, and usually when they go dark in certain areas during the broadcast, that's not a good sign in the eyes of folks. Basically, you go dark, before they had the lights go down a bit. It looked like, basically, I'm not going to lie, and I say this with all due respect, it looked like, one of those shows that the NWA, Billy Corgan's NWA does, or used to do. It's like that. It looked like that. Or it looked like mainly some of these smaller independents out there, it looked like that. And you know what's crazy? I don't think it's sold out. If we're going to darken certain parts of that venue for GalaxyCon, then, that they're co-promoting with, then it's like if that doesn't tell you something, that your product is dying and you have to you have to black out floor seating at a convention. It's like you should know something is not right. Something is amiss. And something is not, something is not right up here, or behind the scenes. And that's bad. That's bad. I mean, what's crazy is the roles are now getting reversed when it comes to promotions. TNA next year is going to begin the year with 2 shows in LA. Well, 1 show in Los Angeles and 1 in New York. And the one in Los Angeles is at the Galen Center. And that's a pretty big building, and it's guaranteed to probably sell out. I don't know what they're going to book for New York. They might even book the freaking Hammerstein Ballroom, for all we know. Or something else, a Manhattan Center, maybe where Raw was, initially when it started. We don't know. But whatever the case is, it's guaranteed they're going to sell those out. It's guaranteed they're going to sell them out. And again, that's not a good sign for AEW. If suddenly TNA is back to being number 2 and they're down to number 3. You think that's going to sit fine with someone like Zaslav and his crew? Knowing that, wait a minute, we were number 2, now we're number 3. We're number 3 behind this company that's on a cable channel that not many people get, and the only way they can get it outside of that is through a YouTube membership or a subscription membership. It's like, what's going on here? It's not going to sit well with them. Now, unless the end goal at the end of this, at World's End, is for Moxley to come out, along with Tony Khan, and Tony Khan, in story or whatever, has to forcibly rename the company All Extreme Wrestling. Well, now it's nothing but Hardcore Wrestling. Then so be it. Then so be it. If that's what it's going to take, because people want to have something akin to what ECW and GCW and all them were, then so be it. If that's what it's going to take, fine. But I don't even think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to work. And it's a shame. It's a shame. It's almost like Tony Khan. When Cody Rhodes and then CM Punk left, well, he fired CM Punk, but when Cody Rhodes left and then he fired CM Punk, it's almost like Tony Khan's reason for living and reason for being a wrestling fan died. Because he lost the heart and soul of the company. He lost the 2 prominent players that knew how to write stories, knew how to help build the future of the business in that company. They're gone now. And they're with the competition. And oh, by the way, one of them, who was an EVP and knew how to tell stories, is WWE champion in the face of WWE. The other, is drawing in merchandise, drawing in money, and, is happier than they ever were. And oh, by the way, and the reason they're happy is because they're working in a place where basically, as they put it, it's not run by children. They're allowed to still be themselves, but they know their limits. They're reminded of their limits. So, I think that's what happened. I think he just lost his will to be a fan. And he can cover it up all he wants. His talent can cover it up all they want. It's not a good look. Now, some people would say there are positives that are coming, like Rampage is not going to be a thing anymore, and that's great. But if we got this Shockwave coming up, that's probably going to be another Rampage. And if not that, then Collision, fine. But he's got a massive roster. You know, what are you going to do? You got so much talent to showcase. What are you going to do? Just put them in multi-person tags or multi-person matches all the time? Just to ensure everybody gets on? Something needs to be done, and something needs to be done now. And you know what's funny? Ricochet wanted to go here because he wanted to be himself again, or find himself again. You know, as I mentioned earlier, he mentioned that AEW wouldn't be around if it wasn't for Ricochet. You know, he mentioned that. You know, he mentioned that AEW wouldn't be around if it wasn't for Ricochet. Now, obviously, he is trying to become a heel. Somebody mentioned that, you know, during his match on Rampage the other night. And if that's one of the reasons they want to go is because, hey, the company wouldn't let me be a heel and I wanted to be, then fine. Then fine. Go and, you know, find that niche. And then maybe if you do come back, say, hey, see what I did as a heel? Let me be a bad guy. Let me be the bad guy. And I'll show you how, and I'll show you I can do it. And I can show you I can run with it well. You know, if that's the case, fine. But a lot of people feel with him saying what he did during a recent interview, he's not doing himself any favors. He's not. And if that's the case, fine. So be it. You know, so be it. But, look, something has to be done, and it has to be done right away. Because if it's not, AEW is in a situation to where they might have a shiny new contract that gives them simulcasting on Max. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter if, like I said earlier, David Zaslav decides to sell part of WBD, which could be a possibility still, to another entity who probably keeps it in the WBD banner, but sells part of the WBD that has TNT and TBS, and that new entity says, I don't want AEW anymore because they're losing money for us. You know, Tony Khan can forget about this new contract because they'll just tear it up and it's done. So if I'm Tony Khan, I get my act together, and I get my act together now. I go into 2025 and I say, enough of this crap. Enough. I'm going to hire writers. You guys are going to listen to these writers. You can help them with the ideas for your stories, but we're going to focus now. And look, like I said earlier, if redubbing or rebranding it all Extreme Wrestling and being more extreme in nature with the matches, more violent, then so be it. If that's going to help them maybe, then so be it. But we'll have to see. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys, on this whole situation. I mean, when you have people like Alex Hicks, just Alex, formerly Deluxe Man, coming out with a video and saying it sucks, and he's upset, and he gives no Fs anymore, then you know you've pretty much, you know, screwed to pooch and flushed every opportunity down the toilet. When you have someone like JD from NY206, of Off the Script, you know, saying the exact same things, but more verbally, and adding more of his opinion. And the same with Solomonster and all that. When you have Solomonster dedicating Jason Solomon, dedicating a whole podcast mainly to the drama and the craziness and the stupidity of AEW's situation, then you know you screwed up. So if I'm Tony Khan, I look at 2025 and I say I need to step away, which he probably won't, but he needs to step away, or someone needs to tell him, step away, let some professionals do this. And just hope for the best. And if I'm the talent, I look at 2025 as the year that I'm no longer hiding, you know, behind my fears. I go straight to Tony Khan and I say, you know, if you're a real boss, straighten this shit out. And if you're a coward, go and bench me. You know, I'm done. I don't care. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But it's just not a good look right now for AEW. Especially when you have talent that doesn't want to be there speaking out on them, and talent that's not even part of them speaking out on them and making it personal, even though they shouldn't have, but giving their own personal opinion as to, you know, why they feel AEW is the way it is and why Tony Khan is running it and not listening to people. Again, FA didn't have to say what he did, but that's his opinion, you know, and that's all I can say. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the click that bell for notifications in the future. And until next time, guys, give me your thoughts, and I'm out.